This week on Choice Hacking. While Apple is now a trillion-dollar company, its path to success was filled with moments where the entire brand nearly disappeared. One of the most notorious examples happened in 1997. Apple was just 90 days from bankruptcy. Steve Jobs had returned as the head of Apple that year, 12 years after getting kicked out of the company by his own board of directors and handpicked CEO, John Sculley. Jobs had kept himself busy, leading companies like Pixar and Next, but he knew he had to get back to Apple. And when he finally did, he basically walked into a room on fire. Unsurprisingly, Steve Jobs used a bit of marketing psychology, applied consciously or not, to save the company, going from near bankruptcy and losing over $1 billion that year to turning a profit of $309 million in just 12 months. I'm Jennifer CLINEHENS, and you're listening to Choice Hacking, a podcast about applying marketing psychology and behavioral science to business, marketing, experience design, and more. Join me today as we unpack the psychology behind one of the most impressive and legendary turnaround stories in business history. But before we get started, I want to take a few seconds to tell you more about Choice Hacking. Choice Hacking isn't just a podcast. I actually created it back in 2019 to be a resource that helps startups, scale-ups, and Fortune 500 brands double their marketing effectiveness using psychology, behavioral science, and AI, so their sales and profit could 2x too. Over the years, I've worked with clients of all sizes, but most of my choice hacking work has been with big brands like Starbucks, L'Oreal, McDonald's, T-Mobile, AT&T, PepsiCo, and Adidas. But this year, I'm doing something different. In fact, I'm doing something pretty risky. I've turned my business model on its head because I feel strongly that huge global brands who can afford expensive consultants and agencies shouldn't be the only ones who get access to the benefits of marketing psychology and behavioral science. So this year, I'm helping 100 choice hackers create their next or first 100K using marketing psychology. I'm doing that with our free newsletter, which you can read at choicehackingIdeas.com, as well as the Choice Hacking Pro membership. Inside of Choice Hacking Pro, I'll be your Chief Marketing Copilot so you can grow your business faster with fewer headaches. I'll share the tools that help me create more than $250 million in marketing returns and help earn more than $10 million in investment, all using the latest psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral science principles. Visit choicehacking.com/pro to learn more. That's choicehacking.com/pro. Now on to the show. The Apple Steve Jobs came back to was a mess, to put it mildly. There were a lot of problems, but the biggest one was making too many products for too many people. Stretched thin and sacrificing strategy to satisfy retailer demands, they were producing more than a dozen different versions of the Macintosh computer. Retailers and electronics chains have been pressuring CEO John Sculley for exclusive Mac models so they could tell their customers that their store carried an Apple computer that people couldn't get anywhere else. And Sculley, famously the ex-president of Pepsi, gave in. Selling a confusing number of computers wasn't Apple's only problem. They were also selling tons of random and unprofitable products, like its digital camera called the QuickTake 100. Now, a quick sidebar on the QuickTake digital camera because it is a really interesting product. It wasn't even created by Apple, but it carried the Apple brand. It was actually created by Kodak. That's right, the famously failed film brand that everyone loves to say destroyed themselves by ignoring the digital camera. Despite creating a digital camera, Kodak did feel that releasing a digital camera would undermine its film business, so they handed it off to a company with a more innovative brand in the form of Apple. It flopped, but that's a case study for another day. Back to Apple's overstuffed product portfolio. They were also selling or trying to sell the Newton, as in Isaac, one of the very first digital assistant hardware products, a handheld device that kept your calendar, let you keep handwritten notes, and basically was supposed to keep a busy executive organized. But the Newton also turned out to be one of Apple's biggest commercial failures. That many products and product variations left potential Apple customers totally confused, so they just didn't buy anything. After weeks of sitting through meeting after meeting about product updates, production timelines, low sales, and thinly stretched budgets, Jobs finally put his head in his hands and he shouted, "Stop. This is crazy." He walked to a whiteboard and he drew up a 2x2 square with the words desktop and portable on the left and consumer and pro on the top. Jobs put one product in each box and he killed the rest. Steve Jobs knew that Apple needed to focus by simplifying their approach. He also knew that a great customer experience means making it easy for people to make decisions, not hammering them with 100 different product options until they throw up their hands and walk away. When Steve Jobs simplified Apple's product line, it didn't just make it easier for the product team to focus. It also made their marketing much more effective by having fewer messages to try to land. It distilled their thinking by giving them fewer problems to solve, and it reduced production costs since there were now fewer products and variations to produce. With fewer things to try and sell, more potent marketing messages were landing with customers. They could better understand the brand promise, what products were available, and make an easier decision between Apple, its competitors, and buying nothing. Because a product that's easy to understand is easy to buy. When there were too many products and product variations, Apple's customers were experiencing analysis paralysis. It's that feeling of anxiety when you have so much information that any action feels like the wrong one, so you don't do anything at all. It's down to a psychological principle called the choice overload effect, also called overchoice. It says that too many options can be a bad thing. They can confuse and overwhelm and make it difficult to make what you view as a good decision. And once people do make that choice, they can feel disappointed in it because the number of available choices means they can never really be sure if the one that they made was the best one. In practice, simplification and reduction of choice is a lot more nuanced than just saying less options means more sales. A more refined view of choice in marketing is this. Lots of options can attract customers to browse your store and build trust in your brand. But narrowing down choices into easy-to-understand options that are easy to compare makes people much more likely to buy. That's not quite as catchy, but in reality, any purchase process can easily become overcomplicated because most marketing, products, and operations teams do not go through the buying process much themselves, if at all or ever. Or some unethical companies purposely overcomplicate purchase decisions in the hope that you'll agree to something you don't really need just to get the whole thing over with. Car dealers are notorious for this type of unethical overwhelming of choice and options. They ask you a million questions, purposely drawing out the process, and ask you to consider dozens of unfamiliar choices like complicated financing options, extended warranties, services packages, gap insurance, wheel, tire, and paint protection. And sure, you might consider a few of these things, but by the time you're an hour or two of this process, you're mentally exhausted and ready to say anything just to get out the door. If you want to make your product easier to understand and therefore easier to buy, mapping out your purchase process, the steps, the options, the information that people have to consider to buy something from you can quickly make it clear where things need to get streamlined. Start by asking yourself questions like, where are customers getting frustrated in our experience? Signs this might be happening are increased dwell time. So that would be just sitting on a website and not making any choices, or standing in front of a product display for a really long time. Drop off. So how many people just nope out of the experience, usually due to confusion or overwhelm. Or research that shows buyers are experiencing frustration, even intimidation or anger. Next, look for opportunities to simplify information, messages, language, and options at these moments. Also, ask yourself questions like, if we look at our competitors' experiences and compare them to ours, who has the simplest experience? Is that reflected in our sales or our market share? Are there ways to move a process from main stage to backstage? In other words, could employees or digital platforms, even machine learning and AI, simplify the experience for buyers by removing things that they have to do or decisions that they have to make? Thank you for listening to the Choice Hacking Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review it. It takes 20 plus hours to create every episode, and it helps the podcast find new listeners when it has more ratings and reviews. And don't forget, you can learn more about behavioral science and marketing psychology applied to business when you subscribe to the free Choice Hacking newsletter. You'll join more than 8,000 brilliant entrepreneurs and marketing folks from companies like Google, Coke, Disney, McDonald's, and Starbucks, and yes, Apple, who get my newsletter. To sign up, just visit choicehackingideas.com. That's choicehackingideas.com. Until next time.
I hit record a drop, you can't ignore it. I'm transforming now these cars and planes, I'm always boarding. Just out touring down in Charlotte like I play for Hornets.